Hey everybody, this is Everyday Commentary, and this is a video overview of this knife. This knife is the Iron Pup by Berg Blades. You can see there's the mark. And I'm going to go through and do a typical overview of this knife. I'm going to talk about the specs, the price, tell you what I like and what I don't like. But before we get to that, let's go through and do some size comparisons. So this is the Iron Pup, and this is the Mini Grip. And as you can see, they are really close in size. Really, really close in size. And in fact, they have very similar blade lengths, which means that this knife does a pretty good job of getting a blade into the handle, because that's something that the Benchmade Mini Grip does really well. You can see that this knife is thicker than the Mini Grip. There's a substantial difference in the two handle scales. The blade stock on the Mini Grip is also thinner than the blade stock on the Berg blades, and that'll get to a point in a minute. This is the knife compared to a AA battery. It is almost exactly the same thickness as a AA battery. And here is the knife laid out on an American $1 bill. As you can see, the knife is slightly bigger when open and slightly smaller when closed. So let's talk about the knife. This knife is made by WE, and it is made for Berg blades. So this is what I would call a designer-produced blade. He does the CAD work, ships it off to WE. WE makes the knife, and then he sells them through his website. I think that some other retailers like Blade HQ sometimes get some Berg blades. But this is the smallest of the knives that he makes. He makes an Iron Wolf, which is a bigger knife like this, and then he makes a folding cleaver in two sizes, one that was big and one that was slim, but not terribly slim. There were a bunch of different variations. This knife cost $305. There were variations that had carbon fiber here, and then there was a plain titanium. Then there was this knife with black blade and all various combinations of those kind of things. The blade steel on this knife, I think, is 20 CV. It runs just under 2 inches. This is like 275, 2.8. So let's see. Here's my start speed square. And as you can see at the top, so it is very clearly under 3 inches. If you go cutting length, it's probably 2 3/4. If you go from the furthest point on the handle all the way out, it's just under 3 inches, but it's clearly under 3 inches. The knife weighs almost 4 ounces, and that's something that we'll talk about in a second. And then finally, this is a limited run knife. This is not something that's going to be constantly in production. If you like it, you probably should go get it. He had some Iron Pups in stock about a year ago, and then it took a year to get them back in stock as he went through various knife models that he was selling production runs of. So the handle is titanium. This is a G10 insert. I can tell you that the insert is really nicely done. Everything on this knife in terms of fit and finish is nicely done. But let's stop talking about specs and let's get into it. So this knife, there are a couple things that I like, as you can probably guess. I like the fit and finish. The transition between the titanium handle and the G10 is absolutely fingernail flush. You cannot feel it at all. That is a really, really impressive level of fit and finish. It's just such a tight seam there. It's almost like the materials don't change. The only way you can tell that they change is because the coefficient of friction is a little bit different on the G10 than on titanium. I also really like the stone washing here. Sometimes they take it to a point where it makes the knife feel chalky. This is not all the way to the chalky level. The other thing that I like about the knife is it has very striking, clean lines. The grind here is very clean. It's a very traditional grind. I mean, it's always fun to compare a grind to the grind on the Mini Grip, because like this is sort of like a jelly bean kind of blade shape, where it's sort of a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and it still works, but there is something to be said for like very traditional, like this is an obvious clip point knife. You're not going to mix it up with anything else. The swedge here is nicely done. The grind lines are very well executed. The grind is even from side to side. It's actually a hollow grind, and it is a really pronounced hollow grind. In fact, let's see if I can get the screw. It's like so hollow that there's like a ramp. You can tip the knife up and the screw will stay on there because of the hollow. I mean, the hollow grind is very pronounced. And I like that a lot because it makes what is a little bit thicker stock very, very slicey for the size of the knife. So those are the obvious things. It's just, very clean lines. I like this. The lock bar relief is cut nicely. It looks nice. There's a little bit of ramping here at the end of the pocket clip to make it less of a hot spot. Everything is just nicely finished and thoughtfully considered and very traditional and clean. It's a very traditional looking knife. One thing that's interesting about the Iron Pup is something that you don't really notice right away, which is it does have a really nice finger choil. You can choke up on this knife, get right up to the edge of the knife, and it doesn't poke your finger, it doesn't create a hot spot, and it makes a little bit easier sharpening. I really like this sort of like almost hidden choil because it doesn't detract from the appearance of the knife. It adds a bit of functionality, and it just blends in very good with the overall lines that the knife is, the best part of the knife is the line. So I like the hidden choil a lot. So there are a couple things I don't like. The price is pretty high. This is a very well-made knife. This is as nice as a WE knife you'll find, and WE makes some of the best production knives out there. But $305 is pretty expensive for what is essentially just a titanium frame lock. That being said, there are lots of expensive titanium frame locks. The steel is nicer and the fit and finish is probably just as nice as a Christopher's small Sabenza, which is even more at $70 more than this knife. So I'm not going to knock it too hard for being pricey, but it is a pricey knife. The other thing that I'm not super thrilled about is this knife is basically like, I don't care about the weight, because there were a lot of things that they could have done that would have made this knife lighter. Like there is no internal milling here whatsoever on the titanium. This titanium is just thick, 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 no internal milling. The second thing is the handles are thicker than they need to be. Like you could take off a 32nd or a 16th of an inch on the handles and be perfectly fine. And the same thing is true with the blade. The blade is a little thicker than it needs to be, and as a result, they need to put on this very hollow grind. If they would have made the blade stock thicker, the hollow grind would not have been as pronounced. They might have been able to go with the flat grind. If they want a flat grind on this knife, given how short the blade is, the fact that it's not fully ground, and the fact that the stock is this thick, this knife would not cut at all. So they've had to really do a lot to accommodate the thicker stock, and quite frankly, on a steel as hard and tough as 20 CV is, there's no reason to do that. There's just absolutely no, it's either 20 CV or M390. There's simply no reason to use thick blade stock. You can get away with thinner blade stock. I've never had a knife break, and I don't, baby my knives. So you could definitely go with thinner blade stock on the Iron Pup. And again, that has two benefits. It makes the knife lighter and it makes it slicier, both of which are good in my opinion. The other thing that's sort of, it's not great, it's not bad, it's sort of just a thing that I want to note. These thumb studs stick out a lot, and it helps with deployment. I mean, this is absolutely, you tap it and it flies open. But man, are these thumb studs really boxy and sort of edged off in a way that's harder than they need to be. I don't know how I would fix it. It's just these thumb studs seem pretty basic and plain, and I just feel like a knife this nice could have done a little better with the thumb studs. Overall, I really like the knife. I think it's a good pocket companion. It's extremely expensive and heavy for what it is, but the market just has gone up. The prices have gone up all across the board. So if you like this knife, if you like the look at this knife, and I certainly don't blame you because it just has some really nice, clean, classic lines, then go take a look at Berg blades. This is the Iron Pup. I'll be doing a written review and then I'll be out shortly. Thanks.